The rain-slicked streets of Seattle gleamed under the sodium glow of streetlights as Elian Carter sprinted through Pioneer Square, his heart pounding louder than his footsteps. He was late again. For a date with Julian, the man who turned his world upside down in ways he never imagined possible. Tonight, though, wasn't just about stolen kisses or whispered promises. It was about facing a truth that could unravel everything he'd fought to keep hidden. Elian, 26, wiry and sharp-eyed behind his glasses, had grown up in the shadow of his identical twin, Marcus, the polished HR manager at Zenith Tech, a rising software company, where Elian was all raw edges, flannel shirts, ink-stained fingers from sketching in his notebook. Marcus was tailored suits and calculated smiles, the golden son who'd always known how to navigate the world's expectations. But tonight, as Elian dodged puddles and checked his phone for Julian's texts, he couldn't shake the dread pooling in his gut. Marcus knew Elian was gay. He'd known for years, and yet he'd done nothing when the whispers started at Zenith, where Elian worked as a junior graphic designer. The company's open-plan office was a glass and steel maze, buzzing with ambition and casual cruelty. Elian had joined Zenith hoping to carve out his own path, separate from Marcus's shadow. But the snickers followed him, the queer kid in design. They called him behind his back, their voices low but sharp enough to cut. He'd overheard them in the break room, mocking his mannerisms, his clothes, the way he didn't fit. Worse, they knew Marcus was his twin, and Marcus, the HR manager, had stayed silent. Not a word of defense, not a single policy enforced to stop the harassment. Elian's own brother, his mirror image, had chosen his career over family. Elian slowed as he reached the park where Julian waited. The cherry blossoms were in full bloom, their petals drifting like pink snow. Julian, 25, stood by a bench, his curly blonde hair catching the last rays of sunlight. He was everything Elian wasn't. Bold, unapologetic, with a laugh that could disarm anyone. They'd met 3 months ago at a local art gallery, where Julian, a freelance photographer, had been showcasing his work. One conversation about light and shadow had turned into coffee, then late-night walks, then something neither of them could name but couldn't let go of. "Hey, you made it," Julian said, his voice warm but tinged with concern as Elian approached, breathless. "You okay? You look like you ran from a ghost." Elian forced a smile, shoving his hands into his pockets. "Just work stuff. And Marcus." Julian's expression darkened. He knew about Marcus's silence, about the way Elian's co-workers treated him. "He still hasn't said anything? To anyone?" Elian shook his head, sitting on the bench. "He's too busy playing perfect. Doesn't want to rock the boat." Julian sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders brushed. "You don't have to stay there, Eli. You're talented. You could freelance, start your own thing." But Elian couldn't explain the weight of it, the need to prove himself, to not run away. Zenith was his chance to show he was more than Marcus's shadow, more than the weird twin who'd always been too quiet, too different. Leaving felt like admitting defeat. Their hands found each other, fingers lacing together. Julian's touch was an anchor, steadying Elian against the storm in his chest. "I just want one place," Elian whispered, "where I don't have to hide." Julian leaned closer, his breath warm against Elian's cheek. "You don't have to hide with me." For a moment, the world was just them. The park, the blossoms, the fading light. But Elian knew tomorrow would bring him back to Zenith, to the whispers and Marcus's silence. He didn't know how much longer he could take it before something broke. The next morning, Elian stood outside Zenith's gleaming headquarters, his sketchbook tucked under his arm. The building loomed like a fortress, its glass facade reflecting the gray Seattle sky. Inside, the open-plan office buzzed with the clatter of keyboards and the hum of ambition. Elian's desk was tucked in a corner of the design department, surrounded by mood boards and monitors glowing with half-finished projects. He loved the work, crafting visuals that told stories, but the people made it unbearable. As he settled in, he caught the familiar snicker from across the room. Tessa, a senior designer with a sharp tongue and sharper ambition, leaned toward her colleague, Derek, murmuring something that made him laugh. Elian didn't need to hear the words to know they were about him. His hands tightened around his pencil, the lead snapping against his sketchbook. "Problem, Carter?" Tessa called, her voice dripping with mock innocence. Elian's jaw clenched. He wanted to snap back, to tell her to mind her own business, but the words caught in his throat. He wasn't like Julian, who could deflect cruelty with a quick joke or a fearless stare. Instead, he ducked his head and focused on his screen, his cheeks burning. By lunch, the whispers had spread. Derek accidentally bumped Elian's chair as he passed, muttering, "Watch it, princess." The laughter that followed felt like a physical weight. Elian glanced toward Marcus's office, visible through the glass walls. His twin was there, head bent over paperwork, pretending not to notice. Elian's chest ached, not just from the mockery, but from Marcus's betrayal. They'd shared everything growing up. Secrets, dreams, the weight of their parents' expectations. How had they become strangers? That evening, Elian met Julian at a small diner in Capitol Hill, the kind of place with sticky tables and neon signs. Julian slid into the booth across from him, his camera bag slung over his shoulder. "Rough day?" he asked, reading Elian's face. "Same as always," Elian muttered, stirring his coffee. Tessa and Derek were at it again, and Marcus just sat there. Julian's eyes narrowed. "You need to confront him, Eli. He's your brother. He doesn't get to just ignore this." "I've tried," Elian said, his voice breaking. "Last week, I asked him why he doesn't do anything. He said it's complicated, that he can't show favoritism. Favoritism, like defending me from harassment, is some kind of special treatment." Julian reached across the table, his hand covering Elian's. "You deserve better. From him, from all of them." Elian wanted to believe it, but doubt gnawed at him. What if he wasn't strong enough to demand better? What if he was the problem, like his coworkers seemed to think? The next day, things escalated. Elian arrived at work to find a crude caricature taped to his monitor. A stick figure with his glasses and flannel, labeled Elian the Fairy. His stomach dropped. He tore it down, crumpling it in his fist, but not before Tessa's laugh echoed from the other side of the room. He stormed to Marcus's office, his heart racing. His twin looked up from his desk, his expression guarded. "Eli, what's wrong?" Elian threw the crumpled paper onto the desk. This is what's wrong. And you're just letting it happen." Marcus sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I didn't see it, okay? I'll talk to them." "You've been saying that for weeks," Elian snapped. "You're HR, Marcus. It's your job to stop this. Or do you agree with them?" The accusation hung in the air. Marcus's face hardened. "That's not fair. You know I don't." "Then why haven't you done anything?" Elian's voice cracked, years of hurt spilling out. "We're twins. You're supposed to have my back." Marcus looked away, his jaw tight. "It's not that simple, Eli. I'm trying to keep things professional. If I step in, they'll say I'm biased. It could cost me my job." Elian stared at him, the words sinking in. His own brother was choosing his career over him. Without another word, he turned and walked out, the caricature still clenched in his fist. That night, Julian found him sitting on the fire escape of his apartment, sketching furiously. The page was filled with jagged lines, a storm of ink and emotion. Julian didn't say anything at first, just sat beside him, their shoulders touching. "I can't keep doing this," Elian whispered. "I feel like I'm breaking." Julian took the sketchbook from his hands, setting it aside. "Then don't. You're stronger than you think, Eli. And you're not alone." Elian looked at him, the city lights reflecting in Julian's eyes. For the first time that day, he felt like he could breathe. But the fight was far from over. The weeks that followed were a blur of tension and quiet rebellion. Elian threw himself into his work, pouring his frustration into designs that were bolder, sharper, more alive than anything he'd created before. His latest project, a campaign for Zenith's new app, was earning praise from his manager, Priya, a no-nonsense woman who seemed oblivious to the office's undercurrents. "This is stunning, Elian," she'd said, pinning one of his mock-ups to the team board. "You've got something special." But the praise felt hollow when Tessa and Derek's taunts continued. They were careful now, their jabs quieter, hidden in sly glances and coded comments. Elian caught them whispering about his boyfriend during a team meeting, their smirks barely concealed. He kept his head down, but each word was a needle, pricking at the fragile armor he'd built. At home, Julian was his refuge. They spent evenings exploring Seattle's hidden corners, hole-in-the-wall bookstores, jazz bars with sticky floors, parks where they could lie on the grass and forget the world. One night, under a sky streaked with stars, Julian handed Elian a small photo he'd taken. The two of them laughing at the diner, Elian's glasses fogged from the steam of his coffee. "This is us," Julian said softly. "This is what matters." Elian traced the photo with his thumb, his throat tight. "I don't know how to keep doing this, Jules. Work, Marcus, all of it." Julian's hand found his, steady as always. "You don't have to do it alone. We'll figure it out." But figuring it out felt impossible when Marcus continued to dodge him. Elian had tried texting, calling, even stopping by Marcus's sleek downtown apartment. But his twin was a ghost, always busy, always handling it. Elian didn't know what hurt more, the harassment or Marcus's refusal to fight for him. One rainy afternoon, everything changed. Elian was in the break room, grabbing coffee, when Tessa leaned against the counter, her voice low but deliberate. "So, Elian, you and your boyfriend hitting the clubs this weekend? Or do you just stay in and braid each other's hair?" The room went quiet. A few co-workers glanced over, some smirking, others uncomfortable. Elian's hands shook, the coffee cup burning his palm. He wanted to run, to disappear, but something snapped inside him. "Enough," he said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his chest. "You don't get to talk about my life like it's a joke." Tessa raised an eyebrow, unfazed. "Oh, lighten up, Carter. It's just a bit of fun." "Fun?" Elian's voice rose, drawing more eyes. "You think this is fun for me? Coming here every day, knowing you're all laughing behind my back." The air crackled with tension. Derek stepped forward, his tone mocking. "Maybe if you didn't make it so obvious." "Stop." Priya's voice cut through the room. She'd appeared in the doorway, her arms crossed. "This ends now. Tessa, Derek, my office." Elian stood frozen, his heart pounding. Priya's gaze softened as it landed on him. "You okay?" He nodded, though he wasn't. As Tessa and Derek slunk past, throwing him dirty looks, Elian glanced toward Marcus's office. His twin was watching through the glass, his expression unreadable. That evening, Elian told Julian everything over takeout at his apartment. Julian listened, his jaw tight, as Elian described the confrontation. "Priya's handling it," Elian said, picking at his noodles. But Marcus just stood there. Again. Julian set his chopsticks down. "You need to talk to him, Eli. Really talk. Not just a fight in his office. Make him listen." Elian knew he was right, but the thought of facing Marcus again made his stomach twist. They'd been so close once. Sharing comic books, sneaking out to watch meteor showers, promising to always have each other's backs. Where had that gone? The next day, Elian found Marcus in the parking lot after work, leaning against his car. The rain had stopped, leaving the air heavy with the scent of wet asphalt. "We need to talk," Elian said, his voice firm. Marcus sighed, unlocking his car. "Eli, I'm tired. Can this wait?" "No, it can't." Elian stepped closer, blocking his path. "Why are you letting this happen? You're HR. You're my brother. And you're doing nothing." Marcus's eyes flashed with something. Guilt, maybe, or anger. "You think I'm doing nothing? I'm trying to keep this job, Eli. If I go after Tessa and Derek, it looks like I'm playing favorites. The whole department will turn on me." "So you're choosing them over me?" Elian's voice broke. "You're my twin, Marcus. You know what this feels like. You know me." Marcus looked away, his hands clenching into fists. "I'm trying to protect you in my own way. If I make a big deal out of this, it'll get worse. You'll be the guy who needed his brother to fight his battles." Elian laughed, bitter and sharp. "You think I'm not already fighting? Every day, I'm fighting to just exist in that place. And you're making it harder." Marcus didn't respond. He got into his car and drove away, leaving Elian standing alone in the empty lot. That night, Julian took Elian to a drag show in Capitol Hill, hoping to lift his spirits. The club was alive with color and music, performers strutting across the stage with fearless joy. Elian tried to lose himself in the energy, but his mind kept drifting to Marcus. Julian noticed, pulling him close during a slow song. "You're not here," he murmured, his lips brushing Elian's ear. "I'm trying," Elian said, leaning into him. I don't know how to fix this." "You don't have to fix it alone," Julian said. "But you do have to decide what you're fighting for. Is it Zenith, Marcus, or you?" Elian didn't have an answer, but as they swayed together, the music wrapping around them like a promise, he felt a spark of something new. Resolve, maybe, or hope. He wasn't sure what he'd do next, but he knew he couldn't keep living like this. The following Monday, Elian walked into Zenith with a new kind of determination. Priya had called Tessa and Derek into a formal meeting, and word had spread that they'd been reprimanded. The office felt quieter, the air less charged with hostility. But Elian knew better than to think it was over. People like Tessa didn't change overnight, and Marcus's silence still hung over him like a storm cloud. He threw himself into his work, refining the app campaign. His designs were bold, vibrant, inspired by the colors of the drag show and Julian's fearless energy. Priya noticed, pulling him aside during a break. "You're killing it, Elian," she said. "I'm pitching your work to the execs next week. Keep this up, and you could be leading your own project soon." The praise lit something in Elian's chest, but it was tempered by the weight of Marcus's avoidance. His twin had been dodging him since their argument in the parking lot, answering texts with one-word replies or not at all. Elian couldn't shake the image of Marcus driving away, his face closed off, unreachable. That evening, Julian suggested they take a break from the city. They drove to a quiet beach on Puget Sound, the water silver under the moonlight. They walked barefoot along the shore, the cold sand grounding Elian's racing thoughts. "You're different today," Julian said, tossing a pebble into the waves. "Stronger, maybe?" Elian shrugged, his hands in his pockets. "I don't feel strong. I feel stuck. Like I'm fighting for something I don't even understand anymore." Julian stopped, turning to face him. "You're fighting for you, Eli. For the right to be who you are without apology. That's worth it." Elian looked out at the water, the words settling into him. He'd spent so long trying to prove himself, to Marcus, to Zenith, to the world, that he'd forgotten what he was fighting for. Julian's hand slipped into his, warm and steady, and for a moment, Elian let himself believe he could be enough. The next day, disaster struck. Elian arrived at work to find his desk cleared. His sketchbooks, his notes, his mock-ups gone. A note from Priya was taped to his monitor. "See me ASAP." His stomach churned as he made his way to her office. Priya was waiting, her expression grim. "Elian, someone filed a complaint against you. They're saying you've been disruptive and unprofessional. It's anonymous, but it's serious enough that HR has to investigate." Elian's blood ran cold. "HR? You mean Marcus?" Priya nodded. "He's recused himself because you're family, but the investigation's moving forward. I'm sorry, Elian. I don't believe this, but my hands are tied." Elian left her office in a daze, his mind racing. An anonymous complaint? He knew exactly who was behind it. Tessa's smirk as he passed her desk confirmed it. This wasn't just mockery anymore, it was sabotage. He confronted Marcus in his office, barely containing his anger. "An investigation? Really? You know this is Tessa's doing. You know it's because I'm gay." Marcus leaned back in his chair, his face pale. "I'm not handling it, Eli. I can't. It's out of my control." "Out of your control?" Elian's voice shook. "You're HR, Marcus. You could stop this if you wanted to, but you don't. You're scared of what people will think, aren't you? Scared they'll see you as the guy with the gay brother." Marcus flinched, but he didn't deny it. "You don't understand what it's like, Eli. I'm under pressure too. The execs are watching me. If I mess this up..." "Mess what up?" "Your perfect image." Elian's hands were shaking. "I'm your brother. I'm the one being targeted, and you're letting it happen." Marcus didn't respond. Elian stormed out, his vision blurring with tears. He didn't go back to his desk. Instead, he left the building, the rain soaking through his jacket as he walked aimlessly through the city. That night, Julian found him at their usual park bench, his sketchbook open but untouched. "Eli, what happened?" Elian told him everything. The complaint, the investigation, Marcus's refusal to act. Julian's face hardened with each word. "This is bullshit," he said, his voice low. "They're trying to push you out." "I know," Elian said, his voice barely a whisper. "And Marcus is letting them." Julian pulled him into a hug, his arms strong and warm. "You don't deserve this. None of it." Elian clung to him, the weight of the day crashing over him. "I don't know what to do, Jules. If I fight this, it'll get worse. If I leave, they win." "Then we fight smart," Julian said, pulling back to meet his eyes. "You've got Priya on your side. You've got me. And you've got your work. Those designs are yours, Eli. They can't take that away." Elian nodded, though doubt still gnawed at him. He didn't know how to fight a system that seemed built to break him. But Julian's belief in him was a lifeline, and he wasn't ready to let go. The investigation dragged on, a shadow over Elian's days. He was called into meetings with an external HR consultant, a stern woman named Ms. Larson who asked pointed questions about his conduct. Elian answered honestly, laying out the harassment, the caricature, the whispers, but without concrete evidence. It was his word against an anonymous complaint. Tessa and Derek played innocent, their stories airtight, their co-workers backing them up. Priya fought for him, presenting his work as proof of his value. Elian's one of our best, she told Ms. Larson. This complaint is retaliation. You need to look at the bigger picture. But the bigger picture was murky, and Marcus's silence made it murkier. Elian stopped trying to talk to his twin, the hurt too raw to bridge. He focused on his designs, pouring his pain into every line and color. Julian was there every night, cooking dinner, editing photos, or just sitting quietly while Elian sketched. His presence was a reminder that Elian wasn't alone, even when it felt like the world was against him. One evening, Julian suggested they attend a local LGBTQ+ support group. It's not therapy, he said, grinning. Just people like us sharing stories. It might help. Elian was hesitant, but he went. The group met in a community center, a mix of ages and backgrounds united by their struggles and triumphs. Elian listened as a trans woman named Lena shared her story of fighting workplace discrimination. I thought I had to hide, she said, but hiding only made it worse. When I stood up, I found allies I didn't know I had. Her words stuck with Elian. He'd been hiding not just at work, but from himself. He'd let Marcus's silence, Tessa's cruelty, define him, but maybe he could redefine the story. The next day, Elian made a decision. He wasn't going to wait for the investigation to crush him. He gathered his designs, his sketchbooks, everything he'd created at Zenith, and met with Priya. I want to pitch my own project, he said. Not for the company. For me. Priya raised an eyebrow, intrigued. What kind of project? A campaign about authenticity, Elian said, his voice steady. About being who you are, no matter what anyone says. I want to show the execs what I can do, and what this company could stand for if it actually cared. Priya smiled, a rare spark of pride in her eyes. I'm in. Let's make it happen. Over the next week, Elian and Priya worked late, crafting a presentation that blended his designs with a message of inclusion. It was risky. Zenith's execs were conservative, focused on profit over principle, but Elian didn't care. This was his stand, his way of fighting back. The night before the pitch, Julian helped him rehearse, playing devil's advocate with a grin. What if they say it's too woke? He teased. Then I'll tell them it's not about politics, Elian shot back. It's about people. About me. Julian laughed, pulling him into a kiss. That's my guy. The pitch was scheduled in Zenith's sleek boardroom, the execs seated around a polished table. Elian stood at the front, his heart racing but his voice steady. He walked them through his designs, vibrant, human, alive with stories of struggle and triumph. He spoke about the power of authenticity, about how a company that embraced its people could inspire loyalty and innovation. The execs listened, their faces unreadable. When he finished, the room was silent. Then the CEO, a gray-haired man named Mr. Callahan, leaned forward. This is bold, Elian, but it's a risk. Our clients might not like it. It's a risk worth taking, Elian said, meeting his gaze. People want to work for a company that stands for something. I do. As he left the boardroom, he caught Marcus watching from the hallway. His twin's expression was unreadable, but for the first time, Elian didn't care. He'd said what he needed to say. That night, Julian took him to their favorite diner, toasting with milkshakes. You were a badass today, Julian said, his eyes shining. Elian laughed, the weight on his chest lighter than it had been in weeks. I don't know if they'll go for it, but I feel free. Julian reached for his hand, their fingers intertwining. That's what matters. The investigation concluded with a vague report. Insufficient evidence to substantiate the complaint, but a warning for Elian to maintain professionalism. Tessa and Derek faced no consequences, their smirks intact. Elian wasn't surprised, but the sting was sharp. He threw himself into his work, waiting for the exec's decision on his pitch. A week later, Priya called him into her office. They're greenlighting your campaign, she said, a grin spreading across her face. Not just for Zenith, but as a standalone initiative. They want you to lead it. Elian blinked, stunned. Lead it? Me? You, Priya said. You showed them what's possible. This is your moment. The news felt like a victory, but it was bittersweet. Marcus hadn't been in the boardroom, hadn't reached out since the pitch. Elian wanted to share this with his twin, to rebuild what they'd lost, but the distance between them felt insurmountable. That evening, Elian and Julian celebrated at the park where they'd first connected. They sat on their bench, the cherry blossoms now fading, their petals scattered on the ground. Julian pulled out his camera, snapping a photo of Elian laughing, his glasses glinting in the dusk. You're gonna be a star, Julian said, his voice warm with pride. Elian shook his head, smiling. I just want to be me. The next day, Marcus showed up at Elian's apartment, unannounced. He looked tired, his suit rumpled, his eyes shadowed. Can we talk? He asked. Elian let him in, his heart guarded. They sat on the couch, the silence heavy between them. I messed up, Marcus said finally, his voice low. I thought I was protecting you by staying out of it. But I was wrong. I was scared of losing my job, of what people would think. I let you down. Elian's throat tightened. You did. I needed you, Marcus. And you weren't there. Marcus nodded, his eyes glistening. I know. I saw your pitch. It was incredible. You're braver than I'll ever be. Elian wanted to stay angry, to hold on to the hurt, but he saw something in Marcus's face. Regret, raw and real. I just wanted my brother back, Elian said softly. I'm here now, Marcus said. If you'll let me. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. Elian nodded, and they sat there, two brothers trying to find their way back to each other. Months later, Elian's campaign launched to acclaim. Zenith's new initiative, Be You, became a beacon for diversity, drawing praise from clients and employees alike. Elian led a small team, his designs shaping a message that resonated far beyond the company. Tessa and Derek quieted. Their influence diminished as the office culture shifted. Marcus started speaking up, implementing new policies to protect employees from harassment. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. He and Elian began rebuilding one conversation at a time. They weren't the boys who'd shared comic books and meteor showers, but they were learning to be brothers again, flaws and all. One spring evening, Elian and Julian returned to their bench, the cherry blossoms blooming anew. Julian pulled out a small box, his hands trembling slightly. Inside was a simple silver ring, etched with a tiny star. I don't care what the world throws at us, Julian said, his voice steady despite the nerves in his eyes. I want you, Eli. Always. Elian's heart swelled, tears blurring his vision. He slipped the ring onto his finger, pulling Julian into a kiss that felt like a promise. The world wasn't perfect, but this moment was. As they sat together, the city humming around them, Elian realized he'd found what he'd been fighting for. Not just acceptance, but the courage to live his truth. He'd faced the whispers, the silence, the pain, and he'd come out stronger. With Julian by his side and his brother slowly returning, Elian knew he could face anything. The future was uncertain, but it was his, and he was ready to claim it.